Why do you still care about what your parents think about you? Why do you care about what they did or didn't do to you or for you? And why are you defining yourself based on their projection or perception of you? In this video, I'm not going to be talking to people who were raised in healthy, happy families with appropriate levels of adult to child interaction, which then transitioned into a wonderfully healthy adult child to adult parent situation. That is not what we're talking about. This video is specifically intended for people who've come from either dysfunctional or abusive family backgrounds and are suffering from parental enmeshment or family enmeshment, which is when you're way too close to your parents and you are caught in the family story in a way which is draining your time, draining your energy, and most importantly, and most venomously of all, it's actually polluting your internal reality. I've got 5 books to share with you, which I'm happy to share with you right up front, and then we're going to go into it. This is just a real value dump up front. Read all of these books if you want to understand how family enmeshment goes about. You've got this first book, Healing the Child Within by Charles Whitfield, one of the best books on inner child healing. We've got Alice Miller's For Your Own Good, which is about the violent upbringing that you may have been through. This is one of the classics. Alice Miller is a very famous child psychologist, another famous child psychologist, Donald Winnicott, and he didn't draw this picture, at least I don't think he drew this picture, but home is where we start from and not where we need to stay. Another inner child workbook, Homecoming by John Bradshaw. You've seen me recommend this before. And the final book by Charles Whitfield, hold it up on this side, Codependence, ties in with the inner child healing concept. These 5 books together, just take the time to write them down or screenshot this video, do something, buy at least 3 of them if you want to take this family enmeshment, parental uncoupling, getting away from the venomous hooks of the past kind of thing seriously. These books will really help. I recommend them to clients. They are going to support your journey. Let's get back to the video. How can we make parental enmeshment something which is in the past and not your ever-present future, which you need to keep repeating? It's worth taking a moment to just pause before going in of why I'm even answering this question, and I want it to be fundamentally clear that I'm not trying to shame or hurry you along in your healing journey. It often takes years, and I mean years, to fully understand what happened in our childhood, to understand who our parents were, actually as they were, not just subjective perceptions, but the objective reality of what was happening. And then thirdly, to create new identity structures and healthy boundaries with our current family, our living family members, to try and be optimally aware and also generally healthy and generally functional. These things take years. And it can't really be rushed. When I'm working with private clients, it's a repeated situation. Unfortunately, women tend to suffer from this more than men tend to suffer from this. It's this repeated situation of the mom or the dad being way too involved all of the time, and then the client that I'm working with is worried about what the mom or the dad thinks about them, and then responding to all of the constant calls, the constant text, always constant check-ins. That's a really common situation, even in high-performance individuals, even in people who are CEOs and really on it with their life. They have this back door to parental enmeshment, which they won't reveal to anyone else other than someone who's working with them therapeutically, because you're not going to admit to your co-founder at business that you do indeed call your mom every single day because she's anxious about your relationship, and you soothe her that it is indeed going to be fine, and you don't really want to admit to your, I don't know, the other people that you're working with at the office or in your organization that your dad is showing up at your house 4 times per week to make sure that there's no kind of issue with the safety and just checking, like all of that enmeshment. You don't really want to talk about that, but it happens a lot. And even if it's not happening literally, it often happens psychologically. And that's exactly why I'm making this video. This is the question that I received, and it doesn't seem like it's related. It seems like, how can I possibly turn this idea of someone who's clearly wrapped up in the story of their mom, they've had what I imagine to be a horrific experience or two, and they're caught in that whirlwind of destruction. Why am I making a video about parental enmeshment? It's because I saw this question, and with all due respect to this individual, my first response was, why do you care so much? And that's said with love. It's not said dismissively. Why do you care so much? Why are you still defining yourself based on your parents. You are an adult now. It doesn't matter who they are. It doesn't matter what they did or didn't do. At a certain point, we'll come back to it. It doesn't matter what they did or didn't do. You get to choose your own life. This is where the nuance comes in. Because the variety of people that will be watching this video, yourself included, are all at different stages on their healing journey, the advice I give for one person about family enmeshment is very different from the advice I'd give to someone else. Someone who's in the earlier stages of just coming into consciousness of realizing that, my family environment actually wasn't all that healthy, and I don't think it's normal that me in my 30s should have this many calls and texts from my parents all the time. I probably need to look at this. They're still on that initial kind of opening experience, in which case, fantastic, you're on the healing path. But if you're 5 years into that awareness and you know that you had an enmeshed, codependent relationship with either your mom or your dad, maybe another caregiver, but usually at least your mom or your dad, maybe both parents, you had some kind of survival strategy of either being a people pleaser or an overperformer, or maybe the jester, the entertainer, whatever your particular archetypal strategy was, and you're stuck in that because you're playing this game for longer than it needs to be played, and it's 5 years deep into the healing process, and you're still really caught up in what your parents did or didn't do, you might be at genuine risk of having gone into victim psychology. And I don't want you to exist in that space. I mean, genuinely, on my heart, no sense of disrespect to the person who shared very openly in the comments on one of my videos about how they're really grieving this feeling of my mom just wasn't there for me and something bad obviously happened. At the same time, why does it matter so much now? Why are you spending your time focusing on the things that they did rather than focusing on what's within your power? It's shifting from disempowerment and victimization, being in the passive role where life happens to you, and shifting towards a more active role where you are not defined by your family. The absolute foundation of helping someone come out of parental enmeshment, you need to help them realize that they are an independent agent outside of the family environment. You don't need your family to survive when you're an adult. In most situations, you're not caught to your mother's dress. You're not being hugged to your father's chest. You're not a child anymore. It doesn't matter if there was all kinds of trauma. It doesn't matter if there's all kinds of love. Fundamentally, no matter what is happening, you're still going to be fine as an adult, in your sovereignty, as an independent agent in the world. There's many complexities, there's many family stories. I'm not even having a conversation about how much contact with parents, what to do in terms of practical conversations. The fundamental, foundational principle, you need to see yourself as existing, not as an extension of their personality, because the enmeshed child only existed as an extension, as a projected fantasy image, or maybe a role that the parent needed, maybe mommy's little helper or daddy's good girl. Maybe you're in that role. That was then, this is now. You're no longer an extension of them, so please stop defining yourself as the person that they need you to be. Stop worrying about what they think about your career choices, your relationship choices, and what you're doing with your life at this particular age in your life. Stop eating up your own psychic consciousness, being anxious about what might happen if they realized X, Y, or Z. It's just not worth your time. You won't get to a healthy relationship with them by continuing to fuss and obsess over what they did or didn't do. And this is where we go into the second half of the conversation. If you're willing to grieve the loss of your parents, which to a certain degree means reducing their opinion to irrelevancy, and again, this is for people who've been in a dysfunctional or abusive family background, I would never suggest to someone who's got healthy, loving parents to cut off their family and turn their parents into irrelevant features of their former life and then move on with their life. I would never suggest that to someone who's got genuinely loving, genuinely conscious parents who maybe there's some conflict, maybe there's some difficulty, maybe they just don't approve too much of your particular career path, but everything else is really warm and really supporting good communication. I'm not going to give the advice of, just don't worry about what they think and like really extreme on that. If it's a really bad situation, don't engage with them anymore. This is specifically for people who've got a dark history with their parents, and usually with parents who are fixed in their ways, which often, if we're doing this work in our 20s, our 30s, our 40s, our parents are usually in their 50s, 60s, or 70s. And as you know, they're not going to change. Realistically, they're going to be the same way that they've always been, continuing forwards. They might change, but realistically, if you can accept that they won't change, and then you can go into that, it's not going to get different. It's not going to be any different. I need to change this. I need to change this. I have to change this. You have to gain the distance, the psychological self-identification based on who they are and who they need you to be is not helping you. It would help you if they were a healthy parent and they had the ability to uplift you and support you, and they were really encouraging and they genuinely honored your autonomy. Again, healthy families, we didn't experience that. Healthy family, if you can be whatever you want to be, and there's only love and only encouragement, and there's not this intrusive, overbearing energy where you're getting way too many calls and way too many texts, and they can respect adult-to-adult communication, that would be wonderful. That would be fantastic. But if it doesn't seem like a genuine possibility, there are two things that you should avoid. You should avoid ruminating on the past. Yes, okay, it's been a few years now. You realize that they weren't the best parent and those certain traumas happened. You can go through that grieving process and that healing process if you've been through that already and you've kind of fleshed it all out. You've done your inner child work. There just comes a moment, that first moment of letting it go and looking elsewhere. And then the second moment, if your parents are alive, it's renegotiating the actual boundaries with them in real time. It's having a communication boundary. It's reducing the contact. It's eliminating contact. It's moving where you need to move. All of that can happen on the second side of this process. But the first foundation is to just accept that you can move on. It doesn't matter. And there might be a shame response. There might be a triggering of, I need to pay attention. I need to pay attention to what my parents think about me, in which case that probably indicates that there was some kind of abusive situation where you were afraid to be anything other than what your parents needed you to be. It's sad. It's sad. If you needed to be something, if you needed to be a certain type of little boy or little type of girl, otherwise your parents would get angry, they get dismissive, they get cold, and that was extreme. That was really extreme, that energy, like the spectrum of extreme. It was so dysfunctional. Just sit and reflect with the inner child inside of you who's still worrying the exact same way, who's still on edge, who's still paranoid. Because even some very healthy men and women that I've worked with, when we go into that particular compartmentalization of their own psyche, where they're looking at their family story, it's almost like I watch them in the middle of a session go from the 30 or 40-year-old that I'm talking to being a 9-year-old boy, and they say a sentence like, oh, but what would my mom think? Or like, oh, small sentences like that. Or just a random aside of like, oh, my mom would never approve of that. Like, excuse me, we're talking about your business. Why did you randomly mention your mom there? Like, interesting. Or maybe someone's talking about their relationship and they mention what their dad would think. Small little hints. Compartmentalization is very interesting psychologically, but you're repressing old stories. If you're aware of it, you just need to drop it. Don't hold on to it. And if you have had enough years of assessing the story, you can just move on. Enmeshment is only enmeshment for as long as you are participating in that enmeshment. If you start to untangle yourself and you refuse to get tangled back in, you hold off, you just make that boundary, you don't accept all the calls and all the texts, you don't allow instant accessibility, and also you don't reach out. You're neither accepting the hooks go in or launching the hooks outwards, and that takes a real psychological discipline of not getting in your own way, of looping around on what so-and-so thinks or what so-and-so did to you. If you can discipline yourself by focusing towards your actual future, focusing towards what's wonderful in the present, you can gradually shift your consciousness. It's not an easy process. It is not a simple process, but you can do it. You can genuinely do it. You can move from parental enmeshment to autonomous adult, and then maybe in the future you can be the autonomous adult and they can be an autonomous adult, and you can both get together and have a wonderful adult-child to adult-parent relationship. For trauma survivors, for people who've been from abusive families, my strong, honest, transparent suggestion is don't count on it. It's naive. It often doesn't work. I've spent years working with clients. If it would have worked, I'd see it working more often. Maybe that's a bias, maybe that's people that I work with, but the clinical literature also shows this as well. If you can grieve and you can accept, it won't ever be the way that you wanted it to be. And you don't need to be the way that they wanted you to be. You can start to live your own life and just move on. I hope this has been useful. I'll see you in the next video. We're going to talk about more trauma topics, and it's going to support you on this journey. And let me know in the comments section if you want an expansion on this particular family enmeshment kind of thing. Specify down below. I'll see you over there.